Hey, it's Steph, and welcome to the Straight Up with Steph podcast, where we have real discussions around health and life and just trying to be better at both. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Up with Steph. I'm Steph, your host, and today I am delighted to sit down with my friend and colleague, Dr. Brett Kessler, who is the incoming president of the American Dental Association. Dr. Brett and I go way back. I was his hygienist at his practice here in Denver for about 9 years, so we know each other pretty well. I asked Dr. Brett to send me his bio, and this is what I got. If you're not watching on YouTube, I'm holding up a piece of paper with a lot of type on it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just know that he has had a profound impact on our profession of dentistry and also on my life as well, which I talk about today. He's contributed to various magazines on different topics in dentistry. He has a long history with the American Dental Association. He has been on various committees and boards and councils, a lot of it focused on mental health and well-being, which is what we talk about today. He has done all this while practicing dentistry. He focuses on higher end cosmetic, aesthetic, and reconstructive dentistry. By the way, pretty much all of my top teeth are either veneers or crowns, and he did all of it. So thank you, Dr. Brett. Today, we talk about the state of dentistry as far as where we're at with mental health, well-being, burnout, why we're in the state we're in as far as the hygiene shortage, and some tips that he has for practice owners. And he also shares some tips and advice on how he stays mentally healthy. He's got a lot going on. He's on the road a lot. Meanwhile, he has a wife and 4 kids, and he is able to find balance with that. So I think if he can find balance, we can find balance, and he's got some good advice for us. Dr. Brett has always been very open and honest about his struggles with substances, how he found recovery, and the impact that that's had on his life. And him being so open and honest has made me brave enough to share my story as well. So each of us kind of shares our own experience with that today. I hope you enjoy this conversation today with Dr. Brett Kessler. Hi, Dr. Brett.
Hey, Steph. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining. I'm sure your schedule is crazy busy right now, so I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. When Stephanie asks, how can I ever say no? Right?
Well, it's funny because I'm like, okay, we literally live in the same city, not even that far away from each other, and we see each other at out-of-state dental conferences, and now it is a virtual podcast.
I know. But I'm hardly
Kind of
ever in
funny.
town. I don't know what your travel schedule is like. So it makes sense.
Yeah. My travel's, I'm sure it's not as busy as yours. It comes and goes. It's about to get pretty busy again.
Yeah.
But you've got, just a couple months until you're the actual president of the American Dental Association. Is that right?
That's right. Just about 2 months, and I get to drive the ship for a little while, and very, very excited. You've known me a long time, and how hard I've worked to try and better the profession, not only from the practitioner side, but from the patient experience side. And it's like, the realization of a dream, and I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity to be in this spot. And hopefully we'll be able to make some impactful, meaningful changes for the best.
Well, I know, you and I, yes, we have known each other for a while. For those listening, I was Dr. Brett's hygienist for like I want to say 9 years. And in that time, by the way, I do get compliments on my smile, and he is the one who did them. So I'm wearing my night guard every night to make sure that these puppies last for as long as possible.
Beautiful smile. One of my best.
But I remember when I was working with you that this was something that was a goal of yours, and you were working so hard even 10 years ago with the committees that you were on for the Dental Association. And I know you've already made some changes, and I just can't wait to see like what happens when you're, steering the ship, as you say. So what are some goals that you have for the presidency?
If you know me, you know me, but for those that don't know me, wellness is always first and foremost for me. I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and so I feel like when I sought help for my addiction problem, that was the beginning of like living an inspired life. And so over the years, I've been pretty outspoken about my recovery, because there's a lot of our colleagues who are struggling. And, way too many suicides lately. I heard of another one last week. both in the dentist and the hygienist realm. And so I just want to make sure, to keep telling, my story. I hope that no one has to go to the depth that I had to go to. But we're getting ready to offer all sorts of resources so we can get people when they're just on the downside of the top instead of having hit rock bottom. So I'm really excited about that. The second thing is, the expansion of dental benefits, both in the private space and the public space. When I tell this story often, when you were in the room next to me, I always had a grin on my face behind my mask, listening to you talk to our patients about overall health issues. And, we've had all those patients who, had periodontal disease, they had inflammation, you did their scaling and root planing, 6 weeks later, you brought them back and they didn't get better. And it wasn't an oral hygiene problem. They were clean. It was a host problem. And then I start hearing staff ask about, well, tell me about your diet. Tell me, your nutrition. Tell me, are you sleeping well? Your stress level. When's the last time you went to your physician? And, we get these patients back who were undiagnosed diabetics, or 6 months later, they would say they took some major steps to change things in their lives to lower the stress, just the overall health conversations that you had really solidified for me that oral health is health, and it needs to be reintegrated in primary care in its place, because we can do so much for the populations that we serve in pursuit of improving their overall health. So I'm working really hard in the public space. There's different practice models that have already integrated medical and dental under the same roof, and it happens in the FQHC level. It happens, where the safety nets basically. It's also happening in some of the more progressive DSO models. It's happening in the high-end fee-for-service models where we practiced and had that opportunity to have these conversations with our patients. So it's really really important. And in addition to that, I never understood the fact with our current insurance model, with our current benefit model, why we were only allowed to calendarize our treatment based to a certain level. Why is it that I can get a titanium post placed here in my hip, but I can't get one placed here in my mouth? If I'm young, if I'm old, if I'm rich, if I'm poor, if I'm black, white, male, female, in shape, out of shape, if I have any kind of benefits and I had degenerative joint disease, I can be afforded the finest that medicine has to offer. Okay. Why is it that we can't do that for dentistry? Why is walking any more or less important than chewing?
Yeah, that's a great point.
And under the current benefit model, that will never happen. And so we're looking to reintegrate it and providing a way that we can give our patients dentistry's best. It's about time for that to happen. And the research has always been this fringe research, but it's compelling and it's robust. And there's no doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt improving oral health can improve overall health now and for the future. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No. Everything you just said, so many things that I'm just like, oh my God, that's so right. But just like historically, dental and vision has been seen as like separate, which is so dumb when you actually look at it rationally. But now with all of this dental stuff being put out there, like in the popular press and on social media, I feel like people are starting to understand that the mouth is part of the entire body. So I just am excited that you can kind of ride this wave of momentum that we're getting and really make some change. Because I remember back when I was working with you, one of the things that like pissed you off the most was insurance reimbursement and how like strict they were and that's why you chose to go fee for service, which I really appreciated. And I almost feel like I was kind of spoiled for a long time working in a practice like that because I wasn't, felt like I didn't feel like I had to go along with what insurance said. Speaking of fee for service, that's a unique practice model. It's not something that's super common. So like what made you choose that and how do you think what contributed to your success? Because there are some people that maybe want to do that, but they're scared of it.
Yeah. And, it was a lot of times the fear is what prevents people from moving forward into that realm. Um, you know, I was always, the doctor patient relationship was always my focus, and you got to participate in that in a big way, and you were a huge adjunct to the mission of our practice because you really did focus on the patient. And I didn't want the insurance company, the relationship with an insurance company, to dictate what treatment was allowed and what wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
And when I was coming up in dentistry, I studied at the Dawson Academy with John Cranham and the Pankey Institute with Whit Wilkerson and Leanne Brady, and all the best dentists were able to practice this comprehensive type dentistry for their patients in the fee-for-service model, and I couldn't see it working in the dental insurance model. And so, everybody told me you can't start from scratch this way, you can't do it in that neighborhood. And I'm just like, just tell me I can't. That gives me more drive to do it. And we took a lot of crap in our neighborhood. I was the first dentist to open up in a growing neighborhood in Northeast Denver where we're from. And now there was like, I don't know, 15, 20 dentists,
Yeah.
and it was always such an honor that patients would choose to come to us and pay out of pocket for the services we would give them when they could have gone right across the street or down the street and got it for free. But we attracted a group of patients, and this was part of my vision, is about health and overall health and aesthetics, function, health, all that stuff. Remember,
Yep.
it, we attracted patients who were invested in improving their health and were willing to pay for it. I had a saying, there's 2 million people in Denver. We only need to be the dentist to about 750 of them in our practice.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to be the dentist to everybody. And we sent a lot of patients to the other practices in the neighborhood, and they were treated very well there. Sometimes it just wasn't a good fit for what we were wanting to do. I wanted to do comprehensive dentistry in the best interest of idealizing the patient's oral health, and when you take a chance like that, that's out of the norm, the diligence to that vision was always the hardest thing for
Yeah.
us. We had lots of meetings, lots of training opportunities, lots of discussions, and there were times where I wanted to veer, and Steph, you're like, no, Dr. Brett, come back. You're not doing, that's not what we decided. Okay, great. It was a team approach. And I felt so blessed to have you on my right side all those years. It was great.
Well, thank you, Dr. Brett. I know that looking back at my hygiene career, I've worked in a lot of offices. It took me a long time to find one that was my, if I had a forever office, it was your office. And
Mm-hmm.
you and Dr. Gina, for those listening, that's Dr. Brett's wife. She's an orthodontist. And you put so much time and energy into not only like having a different practice model, but also supporting your team. We had trainings that we would go to all the time, all of these meetings, these team building activities where we would just hang out. You really did that intentionally. And I also felt, as a hygienist, I felt very supported and backed by you 100%, no matter what. And unfortunately, I hear that's not always the case. And so I just wanted to first express my appreciation
Thank you.
for, I felt like I grew so much at your practice. But why do you think maybe there might be some division between dentists and hygienists? Like I hear the position I'm in now, especially in social media, I hear about it a lot. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
curious what your take is on that.
I can't speak for anyone else,
Yeah.
but I looked at the team that I surrounded myself with was an extension of me and my vision, and you all decided to work for me. Again, there were 2,000 dentists in Denver that you could have chosen to work for, but you all chose to work with me because you believe in the vision. And my philosophy was, the better you are, not only as a practitioner but as a human being, the better you will be as part of the team, the better care we can provide for the patients. And I firmly believe that the workforce issues that we're having right now is a lot of it has to do with the lack of growth in the dental reimbursement benefit model. Okay. They haven't raised fees in a long time. If they have, they've been very, very modest, yet cost of living goes way up. And dentistry's hard. Dental hygiene is really hard. And so I felt that we could you know invest in you in ways that maybe we couldn't afford to give you a ton of money, but I felt like we gave a great package to keep you there. But money, I don't think, was what drove you and drove the team. I mean, you had enough to live very comfortably and live good, but I think you were more invested in the mission. And so if you're more invested in the mission, I need to keep driving the mission, and growing your engagement in the mission, and that involves supporting you. And I couldn't do any of the dentistry that I was doing without my team. I couldn't,
Yeah.
and it wasn't, to me, it wasn't a cost, it was an investment.
Yeah, and I'm sure that maybe some of your colleagues, I don't know if they would say this to your face, but they were probably like, "Oh my God, like how is he paying for them to go all to all these CE and like do all these meetings and stuff?" But I
Mm-hmm.
guess for you, you always had that kind of global vision. It wasn't just an employer employee, like here's your money type of relationship. You had this global view of what you wanted the practice to be, and you had very clear core values. We talked about it
Mm-hmm.
at all of our meetings, and just, yeah, keeping that in front of mind, I'm sure, is what kind of set you apart as an employer. And I
Yeah.
feel very fortunate to be part of it.
Yeah, thanks. Remember, the first core value was the power of team, and that
And it was
was
a team.
yeah.
Yeah, we all
We weren't
supported each
perfect. We
other.
didn't always get along. And there were some stressful days, but on a net basis, we had an amazing time. And so going back to the benefit model and and global vision of things, the dental hygiene salaries have skyrocketed since COVID, and it's all based on supply and demand. And and that's pure economics, and it's in this, if you do pure economics, there can't be a ceiling. The insurance benefit reimbursement model is an artificial ceiling that dictated what the ceiling is. And so that's where the stress became between dentists and hygienists, in my mind. But the way I talk to my colleagues about that is, well, I can't, the dental hygienist needs $70 an hour, and we only get reimbursed $60 an hour, or $60 for a pro fee. It doesn't work out that way. And if you remember key indicators that we had, the key indicator out of the hygiene department was, yeah, we always track your production, but my most important key indicator out of your chair was how much dentistry was diagnosed and scheduled. And
100%.
so
Yeah.
if we were losing $10 on a pro fee, I mean, I wasn't in that model. I was gaining, 2 or 3 crowns per patient because of your communication skills and relationship with the patient, your ability to engage the trust of the patient in first of all, in a quick way for new patients, but an overall long lasting time in the relationships we had with our patients, because our patients stayed with us for years and
They did.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
even if
so
they
it
veered
was,
off, they came back. you know.
right, right. They did, because they weren't
Yeah.
treated to the same level of care that we had with them. And so I tell my colleagues, don't look at pro fee reimbursement
Yeah.
versus hygiene hourly salary. Okay. And then some of my colleagues decided, well, since they're going to get $70 an hour, I'm going to work them in 3 chairs, and they're just going to go from room to room and scrape, 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 and burn you out, basically.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work either. That never worked in my model. But I ask them, look at, if you slow down a little bit, look at, what does that patient need? And one of the sayings I always had too was, every patient deserves to hear what ideal dentistry sounds like for them. That's why they chose us. It's not
Yeah.
my expertise is diagnosis of their dental condition. It's not to diagnose how much money I think they have. It's not to diagnose how much money I think they want to spend. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they come to me because they wanted to hear what was the best. And, some, didn't like that. Some it wasn't a good fit for, but for the most part, the people that stuck around were fully invested in that. And I couldn't do that without you, without my dental assistants that I had at the time. Amity being the best, but
Yeah.
Monique, Carissa, all the. I mean, it was great.
No, I know everybody was great, but yeah, when I see on some of the forums, and I don't participate really in the forums. I just kind of watch and see what people are saying now.
Yeah,
I've
me too.
experienced the downside of social media, but um, I think yeah, with some of these practice owners, it's like don't just look at like how much you're paying the hygienist and how much the pro fees are or whatever. At the end of the day, look at what the treatment is that you're getting. I mean, if the hygienist can get a patient enrolled in doing implant treatment or cosmetic, like what I had, or orthodontics or whatever it is, that far outweighs whatever, is on the balance sheet at the end of the day. And
Yeah,
also, can the hygienist set you up for treatment in 30 minutes? Or 40 minutes. I couldn't
it's,
do that. Like you
it's
can't,
a tougher
I don't
sell.
think you can't build these relationships and also like increase case acceptance with this accelerated, some of the crazy accelerated models that I'm hearing now. It's
Yeah,
crazy out there.
yeah. And I sold the practice in 2018 when I decided to go on the board of trustees for the American Dental Association. Yeah, I worked there for a couple of years, and now I'm in another spot with one of my former dental students. He's now my boss, and we've got a lot of insurance that we take, and it's a different philosophy of practice, but I'm just so grateful that he allows me to come and keep my skills sharp. But and I get asked, well, can you still do this in a PPO based practice? And I said, yes, you can. And so when you do a hygiene check, sit the patient up, and introduce yourself to them, ask them what their goals are for their teeth and their oral health, because no one ever does that.
No,
And,
yeah,
and then, you know, get to know that patient, get to know what their goals are. And they may not have goals. They may just want their cleaning and get out of there. And that's okay. But every once in a while, because it's such a unique question that no one ever asks them, they may think about it, and a couple cleanings later, they'll say, I want a new smile, or I want to change this, or I want orthodontics and things like that. And then if it's complicated, well, we don't have time. We got to do, if it's
yeah,
complicated, tell them, I have another patient that I'm going to see right now. I don't have enough time to, dedicate to, this conversation. Can I bring you back at a later time so I can take a really good deep dive into what's going on there, and I could come up with something that would solve, or help you achieve your goals? Can we do that? No one ever says no, and don't even charge them for it,
yeah.
and you could do that in a PPO heavy practice, because you're providing a value that is above and beyond what that insurance benefit allows.
It's such a good point. I mean, honestly, like if this whole ADA thing doesn't work out, you probably have a future in consulting for dental practices because your model was just so great. But I want to circle back to the other goal that you have for your time as president with the ADA focusing on wellness.
Uh-huh.
And specifically, I do want to talk about substance use disorder. And I
Okay.
just want to say, I don't know if you remember this, Dr. Brett, but before I came to interview for you, I think it was about a year before, I was at the RNDC conference here in Denver. I took a course I just randomly decided to take a course on addiction, and you were the speaker. And you very openly shared your story, which we can get into that here in a minute. And then you were talking about, alcohol, but also other prescription medications that can be misused. And at the time, and by the way, your willingness to be open with your experience has motivated me to be open with mine. And I
Yeah.
talk about that in my lectures. And anyways, I'm like getting choked up right now. But but in that lecture, I was struggling at the time. I was in 100% denial, but the things that you said in that lecture planted a seed with me. And then a year, and I was still struggling. I just kind of went about my life. And a year later, I came to interview, and you were the one interviewing me. And I was like, holy shit. Like, can he tell? Because I was still, kind of like having a hard time at that time too. But a lot of what we do is not really when we're talking about our experiences and presentations, it's not really to change someone's life right away. It's to plant these seeds. And that's the same with our patients. And I will never, ever forget that. But I wanted to ask you sorry, I knew I
You
was
make
going to
me
get
cry too
emotional
now.
talking about this.
Damn you, Steph.
I know it's allergies. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
cutting onions over here.
yeah.
No,
But I
I'm
was,
gonna interrupt really quick because I
yeah,
remember the day that you came to me with asking for help, because it was several years into our
it was,
relationship,
yeah,
and I was completely blown away and grateful that you had the trust in me to share what was going on with you. And I didn't believe it because you always showed up. You were always right on. You not only showed up physically, but you showed up to work. You showed up to do your job at the highest level every day. And that's the thing with addiction, especially in dentistry, is the work part is the last thing to go. Our whole lives behind us, our home lives, personal lives are completely in shambles, but we
yeah.
show up to work and we in physically and mentally. So it was quite a surprise, but I'll never forget that day when you did.
Well, and
Yes.
I felt fortunate. I mean, I felt so lucky to be in that spot, and that's where it came from full circle for me. Is like that's
Hmm.
why I was meant to work at this practice because I need help,
Yeah.
So I was hoping that you could share a bit about your experience. And then I also want to talk about, your opinion of substance use disorder being an issue in dentistry as well.
Okay. So my story, is that what you want to hear? My story?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking? Okay.
Yes, please.
I start out with the first time I drank. I was about 13 years old. I drank a beer, I smoked a joint, and I kissed a girl all within about 10 minutes of each other. And I felt like this is how I want to feel the rest of my life. And I had a really great upbringing, good family. Nothing was, it was left for nothing to need. All my needs were met, emotionally, physically, everything was good. I was smart. I was an athlete. I played music. I mean, I had a host of friends, and in college, and I would drink and I would smoke a lot of pot, and I got to college and I found cocaine, and that was where my addiction really accelerated. And I remember the first time I used it, I told my friends, please don't let me buy any more of this because I could see it being a problem. And then
Dude.
within a few weeks, I was buying large quantities and I was doing large quantities. I got into dental school. I don't know how I did, I did pretty average in college. I was kind of lost, but I got into dental school and I consciously said I wasn't going to drink or I wasn't going to use cocaine or drugs anymore. I didn't say anything about drinking. I had no problem with that in my mind.
Yeah.
And so by the third year of dental school, cocaine found me again. And at this point, it became a real problem. I can honestly say that I never worked on patients while I was drunk or high, but I can't always say that I was at my best self working on patients, when you're involved in a substance use disorder. Okay.
Yeah.
Substance use disorder, sorry. And but anyway, I did really well in dental school despite that. And I got into a pretty prestigious residency and I did really well there. And I said, now that I'm a dentist, I'm not going to use anymore. And about the 9-month mark of that 1-year residency, I found me again and I was back off to the
Mhm.
races. They asked me to stay on for a second year and be the chief resident. It was also a cancer fellowship. And Jean, my wife, who just got into an orthodontic program at University of Michigan. So we split up and she moved to Michigan. I stayed in Chicago. And, my addiction pretty much took off there. And, I had no one to really be accountable to other than work. And
Yeah.
so I showed up to work, and as best self as I could. But I would call in sick a lot when I was drunk or high, and because I would not work on patients. And one of the things that happened in that second year, every Friday we had an in-service with different departments of the hospital describing, like internal medicine would come and talk about the dental, dental internal medicine, correlations and stuff. One of the in-services we had was addiction medicine. And an addictionologist came and talked to us about addiction in the medical fields. And she described a doctor who was an alcoholic, is late 50s, early 60s, overweight, hypertensive, red-faced, jaundice, start to get liver problems, kidney problems, smell of alcohol in their breath. And I'm in my mind, I'm checking boxes. None of this applies to me. I was mid-20s. I had none of those health issues whatsoever. And but she did say that every state has a well-being program that if you ever found yourself in a situation, you can call the state and they will help you get help while being able to maintain your license. And so I ended up quitting my residency soon after that because I was such a mess. Moved to Michigan to be with my wife, and and hit a bottom because I figured, well, I got to get out of Chicago. There's too many memories and triggers for me there. So I packed everything up, moved to Michigan. And the problem was that I packed me with me. My addiction was part of me, and I brought it with me. So now I was working in a private practice, and and I was making a lot more money, and my addiction took off. I hit bottom, 1997, the first bottom. And where I was living in Michigan. I brought my staff to a meeting in Chicago, and I dropped my staff off at a hotel, and I met my dealer, and I bought a large quantity of drugs, and I disappeared for several days. And that was the first time ever that I suffered consequences. So I, came back to work on Monday. And I had some explaining to do to my boss. And by then I had already called that hotline, and they directed me towards treatment. And, and I was able to do treatment while still maintain my job. My boss was very supportive of me. And, but when I was in treatment, it wasn't, my MO, okay, I'm a high achiever. Most of us are who are going to listen to this, we don't get this far in life without being able to accomplish things. And if I ever had a problem, I would dive head first into solving that problem. I'd get all the things I needed to overcome that problem. And then I would move on. And when I was in treatment, that was my MO. That's how that was just how I knew how to solve problems. And I didn't really buy into the fact that my brain was wrong. Okay, that it was not working correctly. I thought I can just outthink this, just not use drugs, not drink, and move on. And when I left treatment, they told me, you want to make sure you treat your disease on a day-by-day basis. You want to surround yourself with the people in recovery. You want to go to an addiction medicine doc. You want to be real careful around pain meds. All these things. And I just smiled and said, yeah, thanks. I got it. No problem. And, and I'm still an endurance athlete, but I was doing triathlons at the time, and, that made me feel good about myself. And, and I remember going, so within a few months I was back to using again. Okay. And it was scary. It scared the heck out of me because here I went to treatment. I don't understand why I can't do so. I dove harder into the triathlon world. And because when I would finish a race, my mindset was, triathletes, endurance athletes aren't drug addicts. There's no way they can do these races if they're addicted. And so it kind of fed my denial. Yeah. And so about 14 months after I left rehab, several relapses and several races later, I finally hit a bottom where I knew I was out of control and I needed help. And my wife had, arranged for another meeting with my treatment center, and and I ended up, tweaking a few things, and started taking the suggestions seriously that I need to do something every day to treat my addiction. I need to surround myself with other people who are in recovery. I need to have, people that I can count on that to help me when I'm in a bad space, and I can help them when they're in a bad space. I needed an addiction medicine doctor, all these things. And that was October 21st, 1998. And, I haven't had a drink or a drug or any kind of mind altering substance since. And that's coming up on 26 years. And
Oh,
I
that's
still treat,
incredible.
thank you. I still treat my disease the same way I did,
Yeah.
early on. I go to a lot of meetings, and I do the work that is necessary to keep my substance abuse problem in order. But I got inspired to live my best life too. And the work that I do to keep my addiction at bay also is the same work that allows me to live this amazingly inspired life. And so a couple of years into my recovery, a good friend of mine, who wasn't a good friend at the time, but I heard him speak, and he talked about how important it is for us to share our successes. And so, and it really rung true for me. I kept thinking, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Why
Yeah.
am I ashamed of this? When I was using, I may not have been, that esteemable, and I was ashamed of some of the behaviors and acts that I did. But my recovery, it's the best thing I've ever done. And I feel like I've got a purpose today. And why am I so quiet about that? And then I became, started sharing about it. And that's comes full circle to how you found me for the first
Yeah.
time. And I never regret sharing my story. I always, it always breeds more conversations, private conversations, because you never know who's listening, you never know what they hear, and you never know when it's their time to hear what I'm sharing. A lot of times seeds are planted, several years later they come to fruition.
So many people too, I'm sure you experience this when you talk about it on stage, but it's rare that there's someone who has not been touched in some way by addiction or substance use disorder. And
Yeah.
when I'm done with that lecture in particular, there is a line of people waiting to talk to me about their experiences too. And that has been a very surprising and so gratifying effect of being vulnerable and just sharing stories.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of misconceptions out there about people who have substance use disorder and also people in recovery. And when I first started working with you, we had a large patient population that was in recovery. And so I learned a lot. It was just so ironic. I don't even know if that's the word, but I was struggling at the same time in complete denial. And I was hearing these conversations between you and our patients who are in recovery all day. I don't know, I'm slow, I guess. It just took me a while to be like, wait, I'm one of them also, you know? Um, but when I would look at you and you would talk about your experience or whatever, I'm like, he doesn't look like someone in recovery. And I don't know what image I had of that in my mind. But also, once I started like putting pieces together and assessing myself, I was like, if he can do it, if someone that's successful and poised and approachable and nice and happy can do it, like maybe I can too.
Hmm.
So, would you say, with your experience back when you were struggling, these misconceptions of like, okay, I'm an athlete, or I'm in dental school, or I'm now a dentist, they kind of trick us into thinking like we're not one of those people, but that's not true. I mean, we're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we have this story in our head, and addiction is a disease of perception and misperception. And I'll talk about the use first of all. And when in the disease, I knew when I was in my active addiction, every time I put drugs in my body, I would go off on a binge. Okay. But yet, and I'd be done with that binge and I'd swear off it forever. But yet I would start again at some point down the road,
Yeah.
knowing the evidence that every time I do this, the same thing's going to happen. So my perception was this time I'll be able to control it. And
Mhm.
I had to finally, succumb to the fact that I can't fix my broken brain with my broken brain. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I had the same issue. Like everyone I was in treatment with, they were way older than me. There were a lot of docs and nurses and, another dentist. They were way older than me. They were having license issues. They were having health issues. They were having money issues. They were having relationship issues, legal issues. I didn't think I had any of those problems. I just thought I can outthink it. And I kept judging them. That's not me. That's not me. But it was me, because in my mind, I thought an alcoholic lived under a bridge.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And, I maybe didn't get down that far, but I was definitely well on that way. Okay. You mentioned about, I don't look like an alcoholic. I don't look like an addict. And I had an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. in 2007 or 2008 to testify before U.S. Congress on a bill the ADA was trying to, push through on that would fund treatment for recovering meth addicts, fund dental treatment for recovering meth addicts. And one of the congressional staffers in the question and answer section said, well, Dr. Kessler, you said you were in recovery. You don't look like a drug addict to me. And I smiled just like you did. And I said, well, you know what? First of all, I'm in recovery. And the person you see here today is not the person that I was before I got sober. And because I'm white, because I'm middle class, because I'm a professional, I've been afforded the opportunity to go to treatment. Okay, less than 10% of people, and this is the same today, almost 20 years later, less than 10% of the people who have substance abuse disorder are afforded the opportunity to go to treatment. And it kills. Okay. An untreated addiction is a death sentence, though we don't think it. And so, because I was afforded that opportunity, I can stand here before you today and tell you about my experience of what I see and how important it is, the work that dentists can do to restore someone's smile, especially in early recovery, is magical, because the scars of their addiction are still on their face, even though they're sober. And so oral health is health. We've come full circle again. Okay.
Yeah.
And, and mental health is health. And so, so it's really important. We didn't get the bill passed, but again, we elevated the conversation another notch. And so, we all have these stories, and I could tell you in our head about, well, I can't go fee for service. I can't do that. Not in that area. Okay. Bullshit. Whatever you believe is true.
Yep. Good or
If
bad,
you believe
right?
you can't, you're right on. If you believe you can, you can. But it's not, nothing is going to come easy. Everything worthwhile takes a lot of effort. And so, I learned that in recovery. Anything is possible in the Iron Man world. That's one of the sayings. If you follow me on social media, I always put anything is possible as one of my hashtags, because that's how I live. You can do anything in this world if you put your mind to it. And for me to be sitting here talking to you, very highly unlikely how our paths ever crossed and how we are now. And we don't see each other much, but we're both making these huge impacts in the world. It's pretty cool.
Well, and I know you already said it, but I would have never been able to do anything that I'm doing now without recovery. And that was it was the hardest time in my life. And I did suffer some consequences. I did cause some damage, and I regret that, but I don't regret getting better, and I don't regret learning about myself and learning how to be a better person, and now I'm actually able to help people. You had mentioned mental health is health, which yes, 100%. But what is the state of mental health in dentistry? And why do you think dental professionals might be more susceptible to substance use disorder?
I have a theory that over the last 10 years, it's driven a lot of issues with mental health, and it accelerated the mental health issues, especially amongst the younger practitioners. U.S. News and Report would rate the best professions to go into, the best jobs in the country, and dentistry, dental hygiene were at the top for many years. And I'm talking the top overall job to go into. Okay. Not the top healthcare job, but the top jobs were, dentistry and hygiene were right up there in the top.
Okay.
For several years. And so many people started going into dentistry and then dental hygiene and in their mind, these expectations were that it was going to be a license to print money. I'm on Easy Street, the best job. It's great. But then they find out this is really hard.
Yeah.
And dental school is really hard to get into. So we're attracting the smartest of the smart type AAA personality, not AAA. I don't think I could get into
Yep.
dental school today. And so we got these high achieving people with these expectations that they're on Easy Street once they get in to dental school. And then when they graduate, they're going to be, just, living the good life.
Swimming in
And
money.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no good jobs. And there are good jobs, but they just feel like it's going to be handed to them,
Yeah.
and they don't recognize how hard it is, and they may not feel fully prepared out of dental school, which I wasn't. I'm sure you weren't when you left hygiene
No.
school. I mean, it's a growth. We start and we constantly improve, but our perfectionism, kind of, pushes us and drives us, and we don't fail. And when all of a sudden we're being challenged in ways that we don't know how to get out of, I think the stress. So what do? We dive in, okay, and we work harder, and we put everything else aside to grow our skills, and I still suffer from this, and just I dive into whatever I want to accomplish. I dive in, and we burn out.
Yeah.
We burn out,
And we don't know what
and
that is either. And then we feel
right.
like a bad person for feeling the way we feel, and we don't really know what to do about it.
Right. I can see a broken arm. I can't
Yeah.
see burnout.
Yeah.
And what is everyone going to think of me? I can't stop practice. My patients need me. My staff needs me to work so they can get paid. I make all these excuses. And they're legit. They're absolutely legit. And then there's the stigma. When I sought help, I applied for my license after I was sober for about 14, I don't know, year and a half, 18 months. I moved to Colorado, and I had to apply for licensure here. And on the license application, I had to answer some questions about, were you ever, and I said, yes, I had a substance abuse problem. I went to treatment, and I was put on probation for
Mm.
that. And I didn't know it. I didn't know I got in trouble. I thought I was just going to be signing up for the program that the state board makes you do, and I was already willing and ready to do that. But then I got a letter from the state of Michigan, where I was licensed before, saying that I didn't report that I was under on probation with another license. And I'm like, well, I have a contract for my recovery, and it's not in trouble. Yeah, you're on probation. That's trouble.
My
And
gosh.
that's what, it drives the stigma. So one of the cool things about my position right now, I'm working with an oral surgeon from Texas who happens to be a state board member, Bob McNeil. Amazing guy, really bright, and he's got this passion to revise those stigmatizing questions. And we're going around the country trying to change that. And it's working. We got him changed in Texas, which is unbelievable. Okay. And both he and I are going to be going to the American Association of Dental Boards meeting at the end of September to talk about this with them, because nobody should be penalized for seeking help. They should be applauded. Okay.
Yeah.
If I go to seek help because I'm diabetic, do I get put on probation for that?
I know the
Okay.
stigma around it's crazy. It's ridiculous.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's a societal stigma, but it's a stigma in here too that we tell ourselves.
It is.
And it's self-fulfilling.
Yeah. And that's what worries me about, dental professionals, because we are perfectionists. Typically, we're caretakers, so we're worried about everyone else. We don't necessarily worry about ourselves. And with all of the pressures you just listed, as far as, what we go through, it's very easy to reach for a substance or a drink or drug or pot or whatever, to kind of numb out. But then there's that, like, what if it does turn into a problem? They've got a license to worry about. What if they do need help? They're scared of getting help because they don't want to mess up their license. And then it's this whole thing. So I know that
And
you're
getting
working.
found out.
Yeah.
getting found out.
Yeah. 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 And or getting in trouble or whatever it is. And I know you're already working really hard for that. What if someone in dentistry is struggling? Like, what options do they have? Like, where should they go, or what resources do we have?
So every state has a wellness program called the State Dental Society. They will direct you to help. All inquiries are anonymous, and they will get you directed into a program that will help you. It's not always easy, and it's not always and we are drivers of our of what we think we know is best, and a lot of times we're going to have to do things that maybe counterintuitive to what we think is best for us. But these programs work. These programs have a 70 to 75% success rate. People who try
Wow.
to do this on their own is the 3 to 6% level. Okay, if I were to do a filling that had a success rate of 3%, versus a filling that had a success rate of 75%, there's no question. But
Yeah.
yet when we think we know what's best for us, that drives people to try and get help on their own. And so I
Well, that
would I
was
would
the
recommend
yeah.
reaching out for help. Please put my phone number down as a resource. I'm busy as hell, but I will always answer the phone in these kind of situations. You know that. But there's lots of us around, and we're all ready to answer the phone when someone needs help.
Yeah, and I know Dr. Brett, I mean, I've heard you literally give your phone number out on podcasts before, and I'll put your contact information in the show notes. I'm always here too, you know. But it's just that was the biggest thing for me. Back when I remember finally admitting that I had a problem was like, I mean, my ego was huge, and
Right.
I thought I could control it. I thought I was handling everything, and I wasn't. So that was really the first step, is just realizing like shit is not under your control. Like you need some help. And I could not have done it on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
much bigger than us. And I'll say it again. Yeah, I could not fix my broken brain with my broken brain.
Yeah.
My
It should be
brain
like a bumper sticker.
I know. My brain led me to continuing to use, even though the evidence was this is not a good thing. It was
Yeah. So why
100%
do we
successful in being a bad thing, but yet I still chose to do
yeah.
it.
And why do we think that we're going to think our way into like sobriety or
Right,
recovery by ourselves? It's crazy.
right. Yeah.
Um, so I want to, before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you, because I know that I mean, you're in recovery, you're a dentist, you are going to be the president of the ADA, you're doing 5 million things. How do you find balance because I know that's really important, especially to prevent burnout. Like, do you have healthy habits that you do, or I know you're an endurance athlete. Does that help you?
Yes. Thank you for asking that.
Yes, and yes.
I do my best to take care of myself intentionally. First, I am my most valuable asset, and I must take care of myself as such. And so, I wake up early in the morning, usually around 5:30. I get up, I do some meditation to get my head straight, do some stretching, maybe some yoga. Maybe sometimes I'll go for a run or a bike ride or go lift weights, push some weights around. But after the meditation, I'll journal a little bit based on the whatever pops in my head,
Hmm.
and and then I'll look at my day and see what I got planned. And a lot of times I'll have some things that are not so fun during the day that I have to face, some difficult conversations or whatever. And I used to be I spent a lot of time trying to scheme about those conversations. How can I win? How can I do this so I come out on
Mm.
top? And that's evolved over the years to how can I show up as my best self for the best possible outcome of these situations? And
It's a
it's
much
so
better way
much
to go about
easier.
it.
It's so much
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah. Less
So,
pressure for
and
sure.
I do that. And, and then so when the unexpected happens during the day, I can deal with it with a very clear head because I've got a plan. And so that's how I set my mind for a successful day. And I don't do it every day, but I pretty much do something along that line. I'll exercise, I'll journal, I'll meditate, but some days I'll skip it, and those days aren't as nearly as good. It really are, and then I try and eat as healthy as I can. I try and get to bed at a reasonable hour. I try and exercise at a reasonable rate for me,
Hmm.
and I try and fit it in intentionally every day, by design. I remember the movie Forrest Gump. Okay, the very opening scene, there was this feather just kind of flying around in the wind and dropping and dancing around, and then moving. The wind would take it to another place, and it would fly around and dance around. And that opening scene was a metaphor for Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump kept showing up in these crazy, amazing events in history, and he'd just be like, "Oh my God," and that's what we all think life is. That will just be that feather floating in the wind, and the wind's going to drop us in a great place. And it's the fairy tale of that movie. And the
Yeah.
reality is, when I live with intention, I can do all these things. I've got a vision board right here. I'm going to wall and show you. I don't know if you can see that. I look
Oh
at
yeah,
that
I can see
every day.
it.
Remember,
Yep.
this
Oh
was in
my
my
gosh.
office. Remember, this was in my office at
Yes,
the
I
thing. It's something
do.
that I would look at every day. Yeah. And so I try and surround myself with, these things that remind me of my mission. And every 5 years or so, I'd write a mission or vision statement for the next 5 years. And most of the things that I put in there came true. But
Wow.
when you dial it down, is you got a 5 year vision that's way out here. But when you dial it down to a day by day deal, every decision I make, am I bringing myself closer to that vision, or am I bringing myself further away from that vision? And if I keep going further away from that vision, I have to ask myself, is my vision really what I want? And maybe I need to change the vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, get right, Brett, and go back to, that path where you wanted to go. And it's all by intention. And, don't get me wrong, my life is far from perfect, and I have good days, I have bad days, I'm human. And I've sought help for, different things, depression, PTSD, while I've been in recovery. And I'm open about that too. Just because I'm sober doesn't mean life is like, that
Wow.
bit, life is life. And
Yeah.
I got tools now, and I'm humble enough to recognize when I'm not in a great place and I need to ask for help.
That what you said about intention is huge. And I like it's all about, knowing where you want to be in a year, couple years, 5 years, what you want to contribute, how you want to show up, and really building your life around that. And, sometimes I get grief from my family or friends or colleagues or whatever about me, skipping out on parties so I can go to sleep. That's
Right. Yeah.
because, one, I don't enjoy, I don't enjoy some aspects of parties anymore. Plus, I really value my sleep, and I need to show up as my best self the next day, and that starts the night before for me,
Yeah.
or eating healthy, or exercising, or just being mindful, whatever it is. I I'm not like this naturally. Like I have to do it, but it's because I want to show up as my best self, and that's really what you're saying too.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's a lonely road because people
It can
don't
be,
understand what you're doing. When
yeah,
you decided to, move into, first of all, speaking, and then into the posture and ergonomics realm, I bet everyone didn't say, "Oh my God, that's great. You're going to quit your $60 an hour job to do what?
yep,
You're going to what?
yeah,
You're crazy." But you had this vision, and you filled this niche that was begging to be filled. And
yeah,
and even despite all of the negativity, and it's not purposely trying to hurt you. It's just most people don't
no,
understand when you're focused on this path that
yeah,
they talk to you from their own story and their own lack of courage of being able to make a stand and then go for it.
Yeah,
and
and it can
um,
be lonely, and it is still lonely sometimes,
yeah,
but it's like I have something I want to do and I'm gonna do it, even if that means I go to bed at 8 o'clock tonight,
right.
like whatever.
And it's driven by your purpose of trying to improve other people's lives in your
Well,
own
it's the
unique
same with
way,
you. Yeah, it's the same with you with the ADA. I mean, I'm
right?
sure that a million people told you like, no, just grind it out being a dentist. I know a lot of what you've done for the ADA has not been paid. So that's just a lot of time and yeah, people, they might not understand where we're coming from, but yeah, it all starts with your vision and your goal for sure, and you just kind of plan your life around that.
It's been fun watching you. It brings me great happiness. Every video I see of you, you're hilarious with your social media, little quips that you put on there. And, but I knew you when to see what you've done courageously with intention, driven by your purpose is awesome. Just awesome.
Well, thanks, Dr. Brett. And I don't know if you remember this either, but you're the reason I got my first speaking gig. Someone reached out to you, and you couldn't do it, and you're like, "I have a hygienist," and I was just like, "Holy shit!" Like I haven't even put my text, anyways. But you have had a significant impact on my life in various aspects, and I know that I'm a better person because I met you. So,
Well,
um,
feelings
I'm
mutual, Steph.
Thanks. Well, I'm sure that we'll do this again because there's just so many things that I still want to ask you, but we're out of time. But
Yep.
I do want you to just mention how people can reach you or learn more about
Sure.
you should they want to.
Sure. My cell phone, 720-989-7960. My email, BIKODDS@gmail.com. Or my ADA email is KesslerB, KESSLERB @ada.org. So if I
Wow,
don't answer the
awesome.
phone, text me. If I don't, it takes a couple days sometimes, but just keep texting me. I will get back. So
Thank you so much for being generous with that. And then what's the official day that you'll be the president?
October 22nd, one
Holy
day
cow.
after my 26th sobriety birthday,
Oh
one
my
day after.
gosh. Wow, that's cool. That's
I know.
awesome.
It's just very there's a lot of meaning in that date to me because that was my first day sober. It'll be my first day as president elect or president of the ADA. So
My gosh. Yeah, it's crazy how life works out, isn't it? Like it's
yeah,
just yeah, I mean
yeah,
even
it's
the
awesome.
the experience of me seeing you speak and then going to interview for you, it was like a universe thing. I'm just like, "Oh my God,
Totally.
what's going on here?"
So
Yeah.
one last thing, that when you're on a path that is driven by your purpose, angels will appear along that path. And sometimes angels will come with a message. Some will be a message of encouragement, some will be a message of caution, but they always appear. And you keep looking for those messages, and whether you know it or not, but now that you know it, you're going to be looking, and the messages are out there. So
God, that's so true. One question, sorry, I keep saying
okay.
like one more thing. One more
No.
question. This is something I'm trying to remember to ask people because everyone I've talked to so far has so much wisdom, and I know you do too. But what is something that you wish you would have known sooner? It could be related to like being in dentistry or just in life. Just something that you would have wished you wish you would have known a little bit earlier.
Yeah, for me, I have nothing that comes to mind. When I got sober, I got inspired, and I think I would have never got as inspired as I am now had I not gone through the hell of addiction. And so that came right when it was supposed to. I was 30 years old. Maybe it would have been great if I would have gotten it at my 25, but like you said before, your time is your time, and it just happened when it was supposed to. So I have no regrets of that. So yeah, that's my answer.
Well said. No, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rhett, and good luck with everything you have coming up.
Thanks,
Congratulations.
Steph. Look forward to continuing this and see you on the road somewhere.
Yeah, I know. Somewhere out of Colorado, I'm sure.
Right,
All
right,
right. Thank
right.
you.
Cool. Take care.